Good evening. How is everybody? You good tonight? Thank you for your patience. I don't know if I've ever told you this. The first speech class that I ever took, I was a freshman at Rowan Junior High on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I played basketball and football in junior high, and a lady made a tremendous impact on my life. A teacher there named Miss Matthews, she came and found me one day at the end of 8th grade. It was time for class sign-ups, where you sign up for the next year. And she said, I really want you to take my speech class next year. She said, I think there's something there. She said, I really would like for you to take my speech class. I can see that some signs in you. I think you probably would really enjoy it. Can we cut the music in the... Thanks. No, you're good. So I sign up to take this speech class, and while I'm in the speech class, we have our first little speech, and you had to they gave you a topic, and you had to put the little introduction, and then you had to put your body and have points and a conclusion. You had to submit an outline. You had to get up in front of the class, and it was short, 3 to 4 minute little speech that you had to give. And so I gave the speech, and then waited to get my grade back, kind of arrogantly. I'm listening to everybody else's. I know I did better than the rest of these people, kind of thing. I know I killed this. And so I get my grade back, and all it has at the top is F in red. See me after class. Yes, ma'am. So I saw her after class, and she said, your speech was fine. She said, but I told you before you ever got up there that there was a cardinal rule of public speaking, and you broke it. So that's why you failed your first speech. She said, don't you ever get up in front of anybody with gum in your mouth again. So tonight, I walked in, and the reason I ran out is because I was chewing a piece of gum as I walked in a minute ago, and I had visions of Miss Matthews glaring at me in the ninth grade. So if she's listening tonight, I got the message, Miss Matthews. I got the message. I'm really glad you're here tonight. You get to be guinea pigs tonight. I'm excited about this summer. We're taking students to summer camp, and Scott invited me and Corey Bird to come to summer camp with our students, and he is assigning us different apologetics topics. And so the apologetics topic that I got assigned, and what I will do is, so I'll teach 7th and 8th grade one day, I'll teach 9th and 10th grade one day, and I'll teach 11th and 12th one day, but I'm teaching them all the same subject. I'll have them in different groups. And so the subject that I was assigned was, is there a God, and what are the evidences of intelligent design and creation? Well, is there a God, and how do we see evidences of that in creation? So we're talking about, if you joined us tonight for the first time, we're talking about what I've called tactical apologetics, having a tactic in the way that we defend our faith, that we talk about issues and we address some issues, and especially the issues of the day. And so tonight and next week, I'm really excited because we're talking about the existence of God, and we're talking about creation. And so when we talk about the importance of the existence of God, if we ask the question, is there a God? There really isn't a more important question in all the world. Because if you don't have a belief in God, nothing else that you will talk about. Now, whether or not that God is the God of the Bible, that's a different discussion. But is there a God? And if there is a God, then it opens up the Pandora's box of every other question. If there is a God, who is He? How can I know Him? How can I have a relationship with Him? What's He like? What's His character? All of those questions. But until you establish the fact that there is a God, none of the rest of those questions are open to you. So when we ask the first question, is there a God? and we turn scripturally, it's interesting that you don't get out of not only the first verse, but the very first few words of Scripture, because when you turn to Genesis 1:1, and you don't have to turn there because you probably already have it memorized, right? In the beginning, God. So it's fascinating to me that the Bible does not start off with a tactical apologetic about God. The Bible doesn't start off with saying, let me prove to you that there is a God. The Bible starts off with the assumption that there is a God. The Bible assumes that human beings will innately understand that there is a God, which begs the question, if you were to leave someone alone, you weren't to teach them religion, you weren't to teach them the Bible. Now, they would obviously be lost because you can't be saved without knowing the name of Jesus. But when they study children, not children who have been in church, not children who have been schooled in it, when they study small children across the board, do you know that it is almost 100% of small children believe in God? It is almost as if there is a God vacuum or God belief that comes programmed into the DNA of a human being, because when you look at it, there are some logical things I think that we see that show us. I mean, you know Psalm 14:1, it says, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. Well, if that's the case, we want to equip students, but we want to equip adults too in a world where there's evidently a lot of fools. And so we need to understand the rationale behind why you would deny the existence of God. Next week, we're going to get a little more scientific. Next week, we're going to talk about some of the apologetics from science and evidence from the existence of God. Tonight, we're going to take a little bit more of a philosophic approach to try to understand why this is such an important question and why it hits at the very heart of humanity about the existence of God, and to understand that the reason that many people deny the existence of God is not scientific, that there are other reasons that people have to deny the existence of God than it is simply because they have some evidence from science. So tonight I want us to talk about a few of those things, and I've made you an outline tonight. Obviously, we're going to have to move pretty fast because you're looking at the outline. But tonight is not about a deep dive, because we could seriously do a series on every single one of the things that you see listed. I could take a separate night for each of those. But what I'd rather us do tonight is kind of do it like a more of a cursory glance so that you kind of understand the issues about why we need to address these things. And so you see that on your paper there. And some of these, if you go and you buy philosophy of religion books or you buy deep dive apologetic books, I'll go ahead and apologize to you, because the way I'm about to explain this is extremely simple. We don't have but about 30 minutes together, so you're just going to get a very cursory glance, but I hope that'll expose and maybe cause you to ask some questions. And even when you're watching the news and you see liberal or progressive or humanistic or materialistic worldviews pop up, maybe one of these things might pop into your mind and say, wait a minute. And so the first one I want us to talk about is something that is called the wager argument. And I don't think this is the best argument for the existence of God, but I think it is a great place to start. It was posited first by a Christian philosopher by the name of Blaise Pascal. And his wager argument is, when we say wager, you know what a wager is. That's like making a bet. Let's make a wager on something. And basically what Pascal argued is that if I wager that there is a God, and you wager that there is not a God, if I'm right and you're wrong, I have everything to gain. If you're right and I'm wrong, you have nothing to gain. So his argument was that it's better to believe in God than not to believe in God, because even if you believe in God and you were wrong, your life would not have any detriment from having believed in God. But if you take that same wager or you take that same bet and you are wrong, you have your eternity to lose. So the wager argument is really a simple one. It's one of the first places to start, because if somebody asks you this question, if somebody asks you, and they ask you, do you believe in God? And you said yes. And they said, and they began to engage you in that. And maybe they ask you this question. They said, well, what if you're wrong? Well, hopefully you'll give a little bit deeper answers than this. But even if all you said was, even if I am wrong, I have not lost a thing by believing in the Lord. But if you're wrong, you're going to lose everything by not believing in God. That's the wager argument. It's not incredibly deep. It's just one that's a starting point to say, this is something you really ought to think about, because this is not something you can afford to be wrong about. There are some things you can afford to be wrong about. This is not one of those things. So that's the wager argument. The second one is known as the morality argument, and Dostoevsky is the one that put this forward and really made the morality argument popular. And the morality argument argues this, that denying God's existence lands us in a complete moral relativistic state, so that regardless how dreadful or heinous anything is, it can't be condemned because there's no ultimate authority by which to condemn it. So he makes the argument, and it's interesting that the morality argument has actually been picked up by the atheistic humanistic camp, but it would be known as the immorality argument. In fact, it's the same argument that is used today when Paul talked about, and he said really simply, if there is no God, if there is no resurrection, then let's eat, drink, and be merry. In other words, live however you want to, do whatever you want, because there's no consequences, because there is no God. I want you to think about for just a moment why somebody would posit that there's no God. One of the reasons that they posit that there's no God is because they don't want to be accountable to that God. Because if there is a God, that God may in turn have rules, that God may in turn have qualifications, He may in turn ask things of your life. So if I deny His existence, I can